Ego is two-faced. One tells us we're good at everything, and one tells us the worst. The word ego, I think everyone, when we first hear it, is that like someone who's very pride in himself. We think of like a Andrew Tate, we think of like a Donald Trump. Their ego is so high, right? There's also the other side of ego, which is telling you you're the worst. Their self-esteem or like self-worth is very low, and then you pity them. And then they're always saying, no, I'm the worst. I'm like, no, I can never do anything right. I can never do that. No, that's their ego, right? Because you know they can do something. You know they've already like shown that they are worth way more than that. But they just won't get out of that mindset. I think what ego means to me as well is like, you're just so comfortable that you won't break out of this character of yours. Alright, what is up everyone? My name is Hammy and welcome to the Hey Hammy Show. On today's episode, we have another quote-unquote like book review kind of thing. I just read the Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I don't know if you guys have seen this book. A lot of people probably have seen him on his podcasts where he interviews a lot of people, man. He has interviewed like Tom Holland. Jay Shetty has interviewed Michelle Obama. It's a very, very interesting book. I remember there was like a scandal going on with him with like how people found him weird for like going through this monk thing and then suddenly like doing a podcast. But look, I've listened to a lot of his podcasts and it's been helping me so much with understanding how to navigate life and also like navigate love life, that kind of thing. Also, he also interviewed like Joe Jonas, the Call Her Daddy girl, Alex Cooper, a lot of different people, and it's been a really, really interesting journey. So I decided to buy his book when I was at the bookstore back in Singapore. And yeah, it's been very, very interesting. And before we start this episode, as usual, I am not a guru or whatever it is, I'm just a normal human being. Any bad out of this episode will be from me. I'm a flawed human being, and any good out of this episode will be from the wisdom of God, and hope you guys learn something from it as well. So yeah, this book, Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty says you'll understand how to find your purpose, how to overcome negativity, how to stop overthinking, how comparison kills love, how to use your fear, and why you can't find happiness by looking for it. I think this is my favorite part. How to learn from everyone you meet, why you are not your thoughts. This part is also my favorite thing. I was listening to another podcast that was talking about this, how like you're not your thoughts, but your mind has a mind of its own, and you are just an observer of your thoughts, and you have the decision to make on what you want to do upon your thoughts. So you are not what you think. Does that make sense? Right? And why kindness is crucial to success, and much more. So amazing reviews from Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, Robin Sharma, Ariana Huffington, and many more. So yeah, let's get this started. This book has helped me quite a bit with how I've been thinking through my day with like anxiety and overthinking. It's not necessarily about the thing about like mental health problems. A lot of people need to understand this. Like, it's not something that you just heal instantly. It's sort of like having a cough or a fever, right? Like, it comes and goes. Like, you gotta the analogy I use in my, not analogy, but like the thinking that I use in my head is like, this is you at your neutral state, all right? So when you're going through anxiety over like whatever mental health problems, you're sort of going to the left and going to the left. And then when you start like finding out how to solve these things, right? And you start praying or whatever it is that you start doing, where you get reminders, then you go back to like this neutral state. And then on days where you get good days where like maybe you have a party, you meet your family, then you get good, and then you go back to neutral. So it's like a constant going back and forth in life with your mood. And this is essentially what the book helps with the mindset with, right? So let's start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 is let go, which is your identity, right? When you start being the authentic you, be ready to lose some relationships. Losing them is a risk worth bearing. Man, I think a lot of us, or probably all of us, have went through this. If you haven't went through this, you are going to go through it. And let's start with my childhood friends, like my friends from secondary school, which is sort of like middle school for a lot of the Americans out there. I grew up with an amazing bunch of friends, right? We were doing scouts together, and we did everything. Like I walked home with them every single day. I hung out with them every day, and it was a very, very close knit group for like 4 years. And then when we graduated from secondary school, it still kept going. But around the time where I started to get like depression in polytechnic, which is diploma classes, I just felt like they weren't there for me at that time. And I've realized at that time, like, they were just still talking about secondary school and the memories, and like everyone was still in that phase when I just wasn't. And as much as I was being true to myself, where I needed to find like my career, my music choices, and going through like that kind of like depressive state, I had to like go away from them. And that was pretty tough, because like when you have friends that you grew up with for so long, and then you find out like they're just not in the same spot as you, and then you have to walk away from that, and they're your childhood friends, and they're the only form of support, especially like when you don't have family that support you through like your mental health or all these kind of things, and they weren't there for me. Letting go of that was probably the best decision I did for myself at the time, and I have no regrets, because now that I am like 26, I've been in Australia for 2 years. When I went back home, that's when I met up with everyone again, and some are married, some went through breakups, some are still in uni, some don't want to get in a relationship anymore due to past traumas. And now just looking back, I'm like, at that moment in time, that was me being authentic to myself, and I lost the friends. But now that we've grown up, I'm like, oh shit, now all of us have grown up, and like, it was such a cool, amazing feeling to like physically be there again, and like, shit, we're all grown up now, and we are all in the like, not necessarily in the same phase in life, but all of us have gone through traumas and like pains of life, that now we can look at each other like, oh shit, we can be friends again. Like, it was such a weird feeling, because like I was going through my own form of like relationship things, and just seeing them and like talking about life, and just remembering when I didn't want to see them, and they knew it too, because I left the whole group, but they also openly took me back with open arms, and I'm just like, these are true friends, man. And I think that's something that I would love to share with people. Like, being yourself can be tough, because like Jay Shetty says, right, like, when you are authentic to yourself, you have to be ready to lose some relationships, but that doesn't mean it's the end of it. It can also come back in future. You never know. And I'm not saying like look forward for it to come back in future, right? Because you just never know what's going to happen with life. You genuinely don't know. And it's one of those things where like sometimes things just align, be it friendships or relationships. And yeah, I'm just glad that I stayed true to myself, which wasn't easy while going through depression. But yeah, letting go thing is pretty interesting in this first chapter already, right? Where we're like, it's not, how do we be the authentic us as well? Like, I've already talked a little bit about like how I became myself, but it's not just our mind, right? It's also what we consume, the TV shows, celebrity, the images on social media. And many of us don't like to be in our own thoughts. So what do, right? We end up scrolling through social medias, watching movies. We don't necessarily have our own opinions. And funnily enough, that's how you end up overthinking and having more anxiety and many more. And the funniest part is like, or rather the most ironic part, right? Is because we're so occupied with different opinions, different movies, different values, in that when we end up being alone by ourselves, right? Our values are the result of watching those things. And all of us, I'm not saying I'm like out of it, all right? I'm saying I am also part of it, but it's to what extent. So the more you consume these things like social media, movies, and you just keep doing this, and you avoid like your own real problems or like the thinking in your head. For example, for myself, during the time where I was going through a lot of like social media stuff, probably was doing like my finding my religion era, all right, when I was like struggling to find like what religion I wanted to believe in, that kind of thing. I was going through so much of social media with like what they were talking about Islam, or they were talking about Christianity, different religions, that I didn't actually stop to like, okay, what do I believe in? Like, what, after hearing this, then what? Like, then what's next? What's my actions? Because your values is not what you think it is what your actions lead to. So I was going through like a year, right? A year of finding religion, but I didn't put any action. Now that I've realized, I put zero action into like, okay, what's next? You know? And that's the scariest part about the new generation of like, I see a lot of like upcoming teenagers where like they're on Snapchat, they're on Instagram so much that they don't have an opinion, like their own values, their own opinion, where everything is like they need a question, or like they start overthinking, and they'll get answers online instead of like finding answers themselves. It's sort of like we read a lot of these stories on Reddit, right? As much as I love reading the stories, all right, the like, am I the asshole or am I overreacting, those episodes where it's like, why are you asking Reddit? You know, you can get an opinion on Reddit, but you need to have your own values and like stick to your own values. Like, for example, like, oh, I caught my wife cheating, what should I do? You need to have your own values strong enough to be like, I want to walk away now, you know? I will not accept this level of like disrespect. Like, having that action and value comes from within, and as much as you can get like opinions from social media, online, or whatever it is, it's like, when are you gonna find your own opinion? So I think the idea of letting go is a mix of like, it's a very weird, ironic thing to do, because for you to be able to let go of something, you have to be able to set your own values, to be able to stand firm on your decisions, you know? And forgetting and letting go are two very, very different things, because some people can just forget, like, oh, I'm just not going to think about it. But the funniest thing, I've done this before as well, like when you just try to forget your problems, you're just going to have this constant anxiety and constant overthinking down the line of your life, where if you don't like actually address it, it's going to stay with you for years, you know? It can be years. Like, there were so many things. Thank God I love to talk so much. I love talking a lot, all right? I love thinking through my thoughts, and like that's why I'm doing these episodes as well. I love talking, right? There were so many things where like I wanted to ask my dad with like how I grew up and like how he grew up and everything. Thank God I asked him these questions, because like if I didn't ask him any of these questions, when I say I asked him questions, it's more like the problems we had while growing up. Like, there were like, obviously everyone has a certain level of like childhood trauma, and like families are never perfect. So I asked him a lot of questions, and it really helped in me to understand how I think, to help my brothers out with how they think. And then not only that, now when I'm talking to other people going through family problems, it's like, I may not go through the same thing, but at least I know how to navigate it. And it helps so much, man, because you can live your whole life being like traumatized from something if you don't address it. And it's so scary to be like, to grow up all the way to like your 30s, 40s, 50s, and like end up being in a dysfunctional family, or end up making a dysfunctional family. And yeah, letting go is, it's definitely a very interesting concept, because to let go is also to mean like you have to have your own values and like your own actions. Finally, to finish this chapter off, what Jay Shetty says in the book is, to be who you want to be, you need to surround yourself with the people who want to be the same. It feels good to be around the people who are good for us, right? But it doesn't feel good to be around the people who don't support us or bring out our bad habits. I would go against that and say sometimes it feels good to be around people who encourage our bad habits. Let's say just having fun, just going out to eat, chilling, right? That's the most common one, just chilling and talking. And then for some people, it's like going out to the bar, drinking. For some people, it's smoking. That can be very, very comfortable. And it's not like they don't support you by saying like, oh, why are you doing that? Like, it's more like, oh, come on, bro, just chill out, just have fun, you know? Like, why are you doing that? Like, it's such a waste of time, that kind of thing. And trust me, it feels good. I've been there. But to me, it will always, it's those things where it's like, it's just not worth for your long-term future. Always got to think about your long-term future. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Chapter 2. Right, I love this chapter. There was something that I learned from this chapter that I think you guys are gonna really, really appreciate. Okay, so let's go. Negativity. It is impossible to build one's own happiness on the unhappiness of others. I think a lot of us probably have gone through a little bit of this when you got betrayed by someone, or maybe you've been cheated on, or your friend betrays you, your parents betray you, whoever it is, and you're sort of like wishing unhappiness from them. And you're waiting for this moment where like they break, or like waiting for their karma, right? And you're only waiting for that moment, then you get to feel your happiness. And unfortunately, as much as I would love that as well, all right? As much as I would love that. But sometimes you gotta retract and understand that happiness doesn't come from that. Maybe you get, let's be honest, you do get a little bit of happiness when they don't get it. Like after the person that betrays you gets their karma, you do get a little bit of happiness. But then what's next? If you're still at home not doing anything and just living your own life, and you're not having a job, you're not doing anything that's actually productive, you're never going to be happy. So the best thing you can do, right? The best revenge that you can do on anyone, or anyone who has betrayed you, cheated on you, whatever it is, the best thing you can do is literally work on yourself. The best thing, all right? The best thing you can do is to get revenge on someone else. Because even if they are happy, when you work so hard on yourself, you start going to the gym, you start working out, you start eating right, you start reading more books, you start getting the right jobs, getting your financials right. When you do these things, you naturally go like, oh shit, my mental is getting better. Like, I'm physically better. I have a job. Like, everything is right. I'm right on track. You naturally get happier. So you can't focus on others, and comparison is the killer of joy. So you can't do that, right? Just know that, guys. Like, I know you can leave down in the comments who you're waiting to get karma. Trust me, I understand that feeling, but it's never going to make you happy. Yeah. Number 2, in negativity, don't judge someone with a different disease, and don't expect one to be perfect, because you are not perfect as well, right? When someone hurts you, it's because they're hurt, and their hurt is simply spilling over, and they need help. There's so many instances where this has happened to me. I would say I've also been on that side of it. I've gone through depression. I don't want to say I've gone through depression, but I've had my moments of depression, and I've also tried to help someone with depression. All right, so let me tell you guys a story about a friend that I was helping out who was essentially going through depression, all right? So this friend of mine was going through a phase of like, I'm not going to say the exact details, but basically this person can't be single for too long. This person always had to have like a roster in mind, all right? And it was just getting to a point where like this person was just getting their hearts broken so many times. Heartbroken so many times, having unprotected sex, getting lied to by all these different people. And it's like a weird cycle, right? Because every single time they get broken up with, or they feel like the relationship is not right, then the next urge is to find the next one, because the next one will be another nice person. It's going to be another nice person who can take care of you. And any relationship at the start is always going to be amazing, right? Someone's going to take care of you. Like, it's always going to be perfect. And this cycle kept going on and on and on. And I saw this person, this very good friend of mine, go through this like with at least, can I say 10 different people? Maybe less, but I would say it's around there, right? And I was trying to help this person so much. Like, I think it went for like a year where I was like genuinely helping this person. And we had different friends around the group that was also trying to help this person. But the more we tried to help, the more they hurt themselves. And the more they hurt themselves, the more it was hurting us, because we can't keep looking at this friend of ours like breaking themselves, you know? And this person is so hurt that they just keep making the wrong decisions. That's hard to break out of. And it was breaking our hearts so much that one day we were like, we had to walk away. Like, there's no way, because we're also getting hurt. Like, when you see your friends going through such a tough time and they just won't break out of this habit, or when you see your family member, your partner going through, like, I don't know, maybe they have addiction, or maybe they have relationship problems, and they just keep repeating these problems, and you're just there like, I'm sorry, I have to get out of it, and they need help. It's such a like, it still hurts me, because like, I really love helping people, and the hardest thing for me to do in these situations is always having to walk away, because sometimes it is too much. Like, you can only help someone to a certain extent until they understand the fact that they need to help themselves. And yeah, I think it's a very good point, this third point, that we understand that like, when someone hurts us and they don't understand that they're hurting us, just know that deep down that it's because they're hurt, and their hurt is spilling over to us, and that they need help. Yeah. All right. Number 4, the more we define ourselves in relationships to people around us, the more lost we are. So this is where I say, like, the longer I stuck in that friendship, I was getting lost as well. I spent too much time in it. That's why I had to like walk away, you know. And we try our best to help people, because you really don't know how helpful you can be. Because the 5th point is, if you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito, right? A mosquito is one of the smallest insects ever, and it can destroy your whole night's sleep. Just one mosquito, right? So same thing, the opposite side of it, right? You never know how your help can help someone. Try your best, but know when you have already tried your best. Because once you've already tried your best, then learn to walk away. Because at the end of the day, the unfortunate reality, or rather the fortunate reality, is like, only you can change yourself. Only they can change themselves. And sometimes you just have to let go, man. Which is going back to that first chapter, right? Letting go. Yeah. So finally, number 6, the way to get out of this negative mindset or negative thinking. It's just pretty interesting. Every time, this is basically for the people who was going through these negative thinking, right? So once you have these like negative thoughts, I think it's more like when you've already gone through many hours through the day where you've gone through like negative thinking. So what Jay Shetty recommends to do is to spot, okay, I have been overthinking, or I've been in these negative thoughts for too long today. Stop. Swap the thoughts. Swap it to something else. Okay, what else do I have to do? Right? So, spot it. What are you thinking about? Stop thinking about it. Swap it with something else. Let's say, for example, spot, I'm thinking about a breakup. Stop. Take it out of my head. Swap. Okay, what do I have to do? I have to record this podcast today. I have to go to the gym. All right, let's focus on those 2 things. That's it. And then you keep doing this throughout the day. And then when you realize you're going back again, or you're overthinking, anxiety, whatever it is, spot, stop, swap it again. For me personally, all right, I don't know if this is going to help you guys, but for me personally, what I like to do is spot. What am I thinking about? Stop it. And then I just go, sheesh. And then my brain just goes like, all right, cool. I'm done. And then for me personally, for the swap method, I have my own like to-do list, and I just look at that, and then that's how I swap. But I just laugh when I see sheesh, and then it's just done for me. So I prefer mine, all right? Jay Shetty, if you're watching this video, I prefer spot, stop, sheesh. It's a lot better for me, right? So that's chapter 2, negativity. All right, for the next chapter, we're going to go to chapter 3. Chapter 3 is fear. Fear does not prevent death. It prevents life. Fear is needed to push you to the next step, not to hold back a bad emotion. The question is, what are you actually feeling, right? So the cause of fear usually is attachment, and the cure for fear is detachment. Instead of it is what it is. Oh, okay, yeah. So I've been trying to learn this concept of like love versus attachment. The best example I have is like probably how my parents allowed me to go to Australia, because they love me to death, right? I'm their son, like they love me, but they have to detach from me, and I also have to detach from them to be able to spread my wings and really grow. And the main problem that everyone has is this fear of losing their attachment towards someone, something, a thought in their head, a job. Having this attachment, that fear is the thing that actually prevents you from moving forward, right? So for example, for me personally, the attachment of like what's been helping me to lose attachment in general is just praying, because I'm just praying for the life of the hereafter. And whenever I think that's why when we look at religion, why a lot of people who have religion usually are more at peace with life is because we're focused on the next life. So whatever happens in this life, we're doing our best still, right? But we don't necessarily have full attachment. Let me get that in my head, all right? We love and we build something for this life, in this life, but we have no attachment in this life, because whatever that we're building in our lives here is for the next one, that eternal life for us, and that works for us. But what happens when you love everything around you here and you're attached to every single thing around here? Then what happens to life, right? Like for example, if you're attached to your mom, attached like that person who like can't get away from his or her mom, right? They're always like, oh, I have to be around my mom, or I have to be around this best friend, or we have to hang out all the time, or that friend who's like, oh no, I have to be with my girlfriend, I have to be with my boyfriend, I'm attached to them. It's such a funny word that now I've realized it's a not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that wouldn't be necessarily the best thing to have, because the more attached you are to something, be it whatever it is, imagine a life without it. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to last with you till you die is yourself. So technically, the number one attachment you should have, I mean, for me personally, other than God, is you should have an attachment to yourself. What I mean by that, like, you should have an attachment to yourself, which is essentially loving yourself, in a sense that every action that you do should be the best decision for yourself. As selfish as that sounds, but it goes both ways, right? The best decision, my attachment for myself, the best decision that I made was to come here to study, because not only that, I ended up reading books, I ended up studying, I ended up working out more. And then what does that entail for my future? That means when I go back to Singapore, I'm a stronger man, I'm a more intelligent man for my family, for my parents, for my future wife, for everyone around me. Because I'm attached to myself. I love myself. And we have to get this right. And I'm starting to understand fully as I read through these books and like all these letting go attachments on YouTube, where it's like You have to let this go. Attach it out of yourself. All your relationships, detach it. Love them, but detach it. All right. Never feel like your worth is going to be less when they're not around you. That's all there is to it. But love them still. I think that's the main difference. Because also when you're attached, then that's where the fear comes in, right? That fear of like, oh, I can't lose them. What's my life without them? So yeah, it's a very interesting concept. And let me know down in the comments like how you guys, or was there anything that you were attached with, or you didn't even know this concept? Because when I first heard it, I was like, that's why I have so much problems in my life, because I'm just too attached to so many things. One of the things that I was definitely attached with was my car, because it was such an expense that I was like, if I lose this shit, I'm gonna like cry and all these kind of things. I didn't love my car. Like, it's just a beater car, but like I was very attached to making sure it worked. But now I'm just like, you know what? I've had my fun. Like, if it's gonna die and it's not gonna work, like, it is what it is. I'm detached right now. So like, if it doesn't work, I can just take an Uber. I can just take the bus. And it's helped me so much, man. Like, the amount of stress car has for me in terms of like repairs and like services and everything, it's just helped me so much by understanding this concept. So it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't apply to just human relationships. It's things, items. It really helps so much. So really try to get this in your head, guys. Like, it helped me so much, and I wanted to help you guys as much as it did for me. So yeah. One last point for fear. Jay Shetty says, fear in relationships with hard conversation. So the example with this, he gives an amazing example of this. It's, in a good way, what do we do when the fire alarm goes off? We wake up. Oh, the example with a good fear is, what do we do when the fire alarm goes off? We wake up, get everyone we love, and find the safest spot. But what happens in a relationship? We wake up, we turn off the fire alarm, and we go back to sleep. We avoid everything, and we stay in a relationship longer than we should. And what you run away from only stays with you longer. I don't know how much more I want to elaborate on that, because I think all of us, as human as we are, it's so funny how, like, I think about it. There's so many things that we're afraid of saying, and we just stay in these relationships far longer than we need to, be it a family relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it is, when we could just have a conversation, but we don't. I find that just insane, because like, it's just a conversation, you know, like, if you think about it logically, right, it's just words. Like, all we need to do is just talk, but we don't for such a long, it can be years, literally years, we don't talk about it. And then we're just stuck in this loop of like, what is this relationship? Like, imagine if we just talked about our problems like years ago, and we could have solved all this shit. Like, especially in Asian families as well, where it's like, we have so many different traumas or like painful things that happen as a kid, and then how do we handle it? Cutting food for each other. You know, like, we could have just talked about it, but we don't. And I'm giving my prayers to anyone who's going through like a toxic relationship with their parents, family, cousins, brother, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. I really empathize with you guys, but don't turn off that fire alarm and go back to sleep. All right. Wake up and get everyone you love and find a safer spot. Rip that bandage off. And it's as hard as breaking up with someone and getting dumped. Both have its pains. We acknowledge both people. Having the hard conversations, it's always worth it, because you have to go through it, man. Alright, so the next part, we're gonna go down to chapter 8. Because like I said, we did this episode with the Love Life episode. I'm not going to go through literally the whole book, but the things that I think really stuck to me, and I hope it will get stuck with you guys, because it's really interesting to learn these concepts and how it really changes your mind when you're out there in the world, when you understand these concepts. And for me personally, it's just been life-changing reading these books, and really understanding who is important in my life and who to keep in my life. And when I see certain conversations that can be held, I instantly have them. I'm like, okay, we have to have this conversation. And it's also interesting when you start to apply these things, right? I think, for example, I've just started to talk to my family about getting married, all these kind of things, like how the process is and like how they got married, all these things. And then you also get to see how like some people are not comfortable talking about these things where it's actually not a big deal. It goes from my mom, right? Lovely lady. I talk to her about pretty deep stuff, but sometimes she's just like, I don't know, Hamka. Yeah. That's where I can tell where like sometimes when my dad is like annoyed with her, and I'm like, I get it, man. Like she just doesn't speak up. And but thankfully, like Allah bless her heart. She's such a sweet lady, and she's a woman of faith, and she's been really, really amazing. So yeah. All right, let's go to chapter 8. Ego. Let's talk about ego. Oh my God. Ego can be a good, I mean, everyone has an ego, right? Everyone has an ego. All right, so let's go with this. Ego and false ego. False ego is what keeps us being the most significant, someone who knows everything. It feels like an armor of steel, but it's actually paper, right? There's a few types of ego. Let's go through this. The arrogant ego desires respect, whereas the humble worker inspires respect. Ego is two-faced. One tells us we're good at everything, and one tells us the worst. Remember the bad you did to others and the good others did to you. All right. That third point to me is very, very important, or like very, very cool. It also blew my mind when I first like studied about this. Ego is two-faced. Now the word ego, I think everyone, when we first hear it, is that like someone who's very egotistical, right? They like have a lot of pride in themselves. We think of like a Andrew Tate, we think of like a Donald Trump, Steve Jobs. Their ego is so high, right? That they're like, it has to be like this. This is the best product. You have to listen to me. Like my decision is correct. To a certain extent, that is good. I think especially if it's in your work, to a certain extent, that is actually amazing to have that, right? Or if you're in the gym, to have that like high ego at that gym, that's a very, very good personality trait to have. But when you're having a relationship, I think that's where that side of the ego is really problematic, because you can't treat someone like that where like you're just expecting them to be the best of the best of the best, because people are people. You can't force anyone to be like that. And especially if you have a loving partner who cares about you, who is not like that, then you can't treat them like that. It's as simple as that. But the interesting part is there's also the other side of ego, which is telling you you're the worst. Let me repeat that. There's another side of ego that tells you that you're the worst. I think this is a very interesting concept, because I think we all have people around us that know that their self-esteem or like self-worth is very low, and then you pity them, and then they're always saying, no, I'm the worst. I'm like, no, I can never do anything right. I can never do that. No. I've been there. I've also seen so many of my friends do that, and I've realized that's not their self-worth anymore. That's not about like you pitying them, empathizing with them. No, that's their ego, right? Because it's not just about that fact, because you know they can do something. You know they've already like shown that they are worth way more than that, but they just won't get out of that mindset, right? And it's a very weird concept, because like I think what ego means to me as well is like you're just so comfortable that you won't break out of this character of yours. So be it the very, very, very good, or not very good, the very, very, very prideful, or the very, very, very worst, it's also ego, which is interesting. Like you go to YouTube, right? Go to YouTube, read books about ego, guys. Like it's all about the same thing. Like there's that side of like someone who just think they're the worst person, or like they're never good enough. They'll never be good enough. They just can't do anything. That's also their ego. You have to tell them like, break out of your ego. Like stop it. Like you literally just saved my life yesterday. You've worked so hard yesterday. You literally did the best job yesterday, and you're telling yourself you're the worst. Stop that ego. Stop that shit. Like enough is enough. Like you're worth way more than that. Like I'm done we've seen people like that as well, because usually these people look very innocent, look very like, oh, you want to, like, oh my God, they look so cute, they look so innocent, and like their self-worth is low. No, like sometimes you have to break out of it. Sometimes you have to tell them, like, kind can also be firm, right? Love is also not easy. There can be tough love. There can also be love that's like firm, that's like, no, you are worth more than that. Stop that mindset. Enough. I've seen you work hard. I've seen you do a lot of good things. Enough of telling yourself you're the worst, because it's that manifestation thing, right? If you keep thinking you're the worst, if you keep thinking you're not worth anything and you're just not good enough, and you think everyone's always going to abandon you and leave you, funnily enough, one day everyone will. Or even if the day someone leaves you, it might not even be you. Like, they leave because they leave, but because of your ego, where you think everyone is going to leave you, and then when that person leaves, then you're like, oh yeah, see, I told you everyone leaves. No, they just leave because maybe they had literally had their own reasons, and it's because of your own ego, because of this low, worst ego, that you actually make yourself feel worse anyway. So get out of it, all right? Ego is two things. Let's wrap it up with ego. It's not just the prideful ego of someone who's like Steve Jobs, Andrew Tate, but ego is also someone who's not depressed, someone who just always puts themselves down, even if the situation is actually good, or even if someone has left them, not because someone actually wants to like pursue something for their own career or for their own life, and then they're like, nah, everyone abandons me. No, that is also ego. It's when you think you're the most prideful, or you also think you're the worst. It goes both ways. All right, so let's finish this episode up with the last two chapters, chapter 10 and 11, which is relationships and service. Funnily enough, I just told Uday about this, where like when I started reading books, I started with like business books on how to like run a business, run a podcast, all these kind of things. And essentially what I've learned is just every business out there, everything that you do in life actually is just relationships. Because how do you get all these things running, right? Like why am I even doing a podcast? It's because I'm talking to other people. It's relationships that I'm building. So I find it really interesting where like I'm just reading every book, just understanding about how relationships should work, or how to build better relationships in general. So before we go on to those two chapters, again, I recommend you guys getting this book as well, Think Like a Monk. It really has been an interesting ride for me. Low-key, I would want to try being a monk. It seems very, very hard, right? He does go on, like, there's a lot of... I'm only telling you guys the lessons that I'm learning from the book, but the things that he teaches, or like the things that he learns through being a monk, which is how he gets all these things, right, is very, very interesting. And like it's tough because they do a lot of meditation where they have to like sit down and like really just meditate. I don't know how to do that. Like it's gonna be really tough. I pray, but like meditate to like sit down and be in your own thoughts, it's pretty scary, right? So right, let's end it off with this chapter 10 and chapter 11. Okay, so relationships. Too often we love people who don't love us, but we fail to return the love of others who do. What's important in a relationship? Jay Shetty says there's 4 types of trust: competence, care, character, consistency. Now, our partner cannot be everything. Our partner cannot be someone who's competent, someone who's caring, amazing character, and they're consistent. You can get all these things from different types of people, and then your partner is something else as well, right? So stop it. And then there was a study by Dr. John Gottman, which says he's a nation top marriage expert. He found that the most important issue in couples was trust and betrayal, which is interesting, right? Because like I can accept almost anything because of 2 reasons. I love honesty. In my relationships, if you've done anything wrong, if you're fully honest, I'm not saying, I don't know, man, down the line, if I'm married for like 10 years and I have kids, and let's say my wife cheated, but if she tells me the full truth, if only she told me the full truth, I might stay. That's personally for me. But the part where I can't or people find it hard to let go. It's not necessarily the physical action of it, but it's the lies before that. Like if there's a lot of lies that go through like before the cheating or infidelity, whatever that you want to call it, to me that's the part where like, how do I trust you anymore in that relationship? Because this person is supposed to be your partner. Where Akash Singh, comedian, alright, he says, he puts it really, really well. I think a lot of us go into relationships these days to have fun, to have love, to care for each other, which is part of love, right? But when you're married and you want to have kids, you want to have a partner that's long term, you become two managers. The both of you, man and woman, you become two managers that's actually trying to work this business up, which this business is your marriage. So once a trust is broken, then how do you two stay managers and work together? Do you know what I mean? Like you can both make mistakes as managers, like that's fine. But when someone breaks each other's trust, then how do you balance that work anymore? You know? So it's a really interesting concept where Jay Shetty brings on like, you can't have all four in your partner, and it's not fair to your partner. It's not fair for you. Like imagine your partner like expects you to be competent, caring, character, consistency all the time. Like you need to have a social life outside of your partner. Do you know what I mean? So trust, yeah. I don't know about you guys. Leave down a comment below. Like, would you be okay? Not be okay, but like, would you still stay if there was cheating happening, or like, what hurts you more, you know? Because for me, it's trust. Once you lie to me, or once something is like, you don't tell me the full truth and I find out later on, then to me, it's like, we're done. Like, I can't, like, how do I trust you? Because then like everything else to me is a lie. Like everything else in the relationship to me is like, it's a lie already. So like, I can't trust you anymore as a person. Another point in the chapter 10 relationships, I like this one. I had to put this down. Often we get crushes on someone not because we love them, but it's to distract ourselves from our suffering. I felt that. Yeah. I think me personally as well, like after going through like a few breakups, or not a few breakups, but like after going through like these kind of things, when I realized like I was looking for someone or having like crushes or whatever that you want to call. I don't even know how you define a crush or like how you like someone, but like knowing the fact that a lot of things in my life are not in line yet, and I'm like, no, like the idea of liking someone feels so good, and just that whole idea of like being able to do the couple stuff feels so good. And even telling yourself like, oh my god, I have a crush on someone, like it feels so good and flowery. But I realized like, no, I have to stop, because like there's still certain things where I'm trying to like learn from myself and like learn from my sufferings and learn from my mistakes, to be like, no, like what happens if I actually get into a relationship with this person and then I'm not ready, you know? And it can work both either way, right? Like you may not be fully ready, but maybe that person helps you as well. But I think as a person, you can tell when you're starting to go into a relationship, and then down the line you realize like, shit. Yeah. But I think a lot of people, just knowing this, I think helps a lot of people, including myself, because there are a lot of people who go into relationships not knowing that when it gets serious, then they're like, oh shit, now I'm not ready, because there's a lot of like things I'm not doing yet, or like I'm not financially ready yet, or whatever it is. And it's like, what are we doing here, you know? So let's end this off. Final chapter, which is chapter 11, service. And the highest purpose in life is to live in service. Because let me just go down with the 4 points of the regrets of dying people. The dying people, their regrets were, I wish I expressed love to the people I care about. I wish I hadn't worked so much. I wish I take more pleasure in life. And I wish I'd done more for other people. And yeah, let's end it off with there, because that's what life is, right? when we have a purpose of not just, it's a fine balance with everything that I've said so far, right? Having the most attachment to yourself. What does that mean, right? For example, when I'm working, let's say I'm just working in retail, right? It can just be retail, that's it. But when I think about I'm working in retail and I'm helping people get the best clothes option so that they feel good and present themselves well, then that's the service. That's the service of I've done more for other people. And this podcast, for example, I love this podcast. Not only am I getting to share knowledge, and I'm also aiming for it to be the biggest podcast it can possibly be. And when you mix those two, then it has service, it has purpose. So if I'm just on a podcast just talking shit, then what's the point? But to be able to share something and like spread knowledge, even if it's just for one person out there, if someone like comments or like someone watches it and like, oh, I learned something today, then I've done my job. And I think it's something that we should never ever forget, is that finding the purpose. It doesn't have to be an insane crazy purpose, right? It can be a mother, like someone who says, I want to be a mother. Great. Then what does that entail right now? At least in this society and economy, right? Maybe you need to get work, you need to get a job. If you find a rich husband, maybe that's good. And he wants to find just a mother that's just a housewife. Great. And just finding that purpose where you serve something, that's all you need in life, right? But also accept the realities that you're going through. So as much as I love this podcast, 2 years down the line, if this doesn't work out, I have to find a full-time job. I am finding a full-time job, but what I mean is that if this doesn't work out in 2 years' time, then I need to change my focus a little bit to find a full-time, slightly more stable job to be able to support the people in my life, to be able to support my family in my life. And I can still do the podcast, but priorities change. So I hope you guys learned something from today's episode. Again, any bad out of this episode will be coming from me and my flaws, and any good will be coming from God. He knows best. If you guys have any book recommendations as well, leave it down in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.